Iran claims to have targeted a U.S. aircraft carrier. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps say they have attacked USS Abraham Lincoln.
The smoke billows into the sky high above Beirut, Lebanon. We're learning Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying those strikes on Iran have intensified.
At 6:47 local time, a Shahd 136 Delta Wing drone crosses the Iranian coastline heading southwest over the Persian Gulf at 115 miles per hour, its small Iranian-made engine buzzing like a lawnmower strapped to a surfboard. It is the first of 47. 12 seconds later, a second lifts off, then a third. Then they stop counting individually because the launches are coming in pairs from 3 separate positions along a 40-mile stretch of the Bandar Abbas coast. Mixed in with the drones are 7 Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles, each one a modified Fatah 110 riding a solid-fuel rocket motor to Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound, designed from the ground up to kill a ship the size of a floating city. The entire salvo costs Iran roughly $48 million. That is less than the price of a single F-35C sitting on the flight deck of its target. The target is the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, CVN-69, a Nimitz-class supercarrier displacing over 100,000 tons, currently operating 180 nautical miles south-southwest of Bandar Abbas in the central Persian Gulf. The Eisenhower is not alone. Surrounding her in a layered ring are 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, and somewhere beneath the surface, a Los Angeles-class fast-attack submarine that Iran does not know about and will never see. The combined defensive firepower of this strike group can track and engage over 200 airborne threats simultaneously. The Iranians are sending 54. The math looks bold. It is not bold enough. 90 miles north-northeast, in the Combat Information Center of the USS Gravely, DDG-107, an Aegis weapon system operator watches his AN-VESPY-1D radar paint the first cluster of contacts before they have climbed above 500 feet. The SPY-1D is a phased array radar system, which means it does not rotate like a traditional dish. It stares in all directions at once using 4 fixed panels that electronically steer over 4,000 individual beam positions per second. It can track a baseball at 200 miles. A Shahd 136 at 115 miles per hour has the radar cross-section of something between a seagull and a trashcan lid. The SPY-1D does not care. It tags every single one. The operator's voice is flat when he calls it. Vampire, vampire, vampire. Multiple inbound. Bearing 045 through 070. Correlates ASCM and slow movers. Count still building. The word vampire means anti-ship missile. It is the single word every sailor in the fleet hopes to never hear and trains every week to answer. 140 miles to the south, aboard the Eisenhower, the Air Boss has 6F divided by a -18E Super Hornets on the flight deck in various stages of pre-launch when the call comes through the tactical data link. 2 of them are already turning on catapults 1 and 2. A Super Hornet can go from a dead stop to 165 miles per hour in under 2 seconds on a steam catapult. It looks like a controlled car crash run backwards. The first jet is airborne in 90 seconds. The second follows 40 seconds later. They are carrying a mixed loadout of AIM-120D AMRAAM radar-guided missiles and AIM-9X Sidewinders. Each pilot briefed for the air defense mission they hoped was theoretical until 3 minutes ago. What the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy did not know was that the Eisenhower strike group had repositioned 60 miles further south during the previous 14 hours, a move ordered after a P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft spotted unusual vehicle movement near Iran's coastal missile batteries on synthetic aperture radar imagery the evening before. The IRGC was working with targeting coordinates that were 14 hours old. For a carrier making 20 knots on a southwesterly course, that is a 60-mile error. For a Shahd 136 with no mid-course update capability, 60 miles might as well be 600. The drones are not the real threat. Iran knows this. The drones are the noise, the screen, the thing you spend your expensive interceptors on so you are reloading when the real punch arrives. Each Shahd costs around $30,000. Each SM-2 Block IIA missile the Navy might use to kill one costs $2.1 million. If you can force the Americans to fire 40 SM-2s at cheap drones, you have just cost them $84 million in interceptors and, more importantly, emptied a significant portion of their vertical launch cells. The math is elegant. Iran studied Houthi tactics in the Red Sea very carefully. They saw what worked. The 7 Khalij Fars ballistic missiles are the real play. They separate from the drone swarm 4 minutes into flight, arcing upward on ballistic trajectories that peak near 100,000 feet before tipping over and diving toward their pre-programmed aim point at over Mach 3. They carry 1,400-pound warheads. One hit on a carrier flight deck does not sink a Nimitz-class ship, but it can turn a floating airfield into a floating hospital for 6 months. Iran does not need to sink the Eisenhower. Iran needs to stop the Eisenhower from launching aircraft. Even temporarily, even for a week, that reshapes the entire balance of power in the Gulf. That is worth $48 million. The plan is genuinely smart. It accounts for radar coverage, interceptor costs, reload timelines, and the psychological weight of throwing everything at once. It accounts for almost everything. It does not account for the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye orbiting at 25,000 feet, 200 miles to the southeast, whose AN-VAPY-9 radar has been tracking every launch in real time and feeding target quality data directly to every Aegis ship in the group through the Cooperative Engagement Capability Network. CEC is the thing that turns 4 separate warships into a single integrated weapons system. A destroyer on the eastern edge of the formation can fire a missile guided by radar data from a cruiser 40 miles west and refined by an aircraft 200 miles south. The missiles do not need to see their own targets. They borrow eyes from everywhere in the network. The Ticonderoga-class cruiser USS San Jacinto, CG-56, fires first. 2 SM-6 missiles leave her forward vertical launch system at 0651, 4 minutes after the first detection. The SM-6 is the Navy's longest-range surface-to-air interceptor, capable of engaging targets past 150 nautical miles. Each one costs approximately $4.8 million. The San Jacinto is not aiming at drones. She is reaching out for the Khalij Fars ballistic missiles while they are still climbing, still on their boost phase, still relatively slow and riding pillars of flame that scream on infrared. The SM-6 can do something no previous Navy interceptor could do from a surface ship. It can kill ballistic missiles in their terminal phase using active radar homing, and it can do it at distances that used to require an Aegis ballistic missile defense ship running dedicated software. The San Jacinto is running that software. The first SM-6 intercepts a Khalij Fars at 87,000 feet over the central Gulf, 70 miles north of the strike group. The warhead detonates in a blast fragmentation pattern that shreds the missile's guidance section. Pieces of Iranian solid rocket motor tumble toward the water like burning confetti across 3 miles of sky. 40 miles east, the Gravely handles the drones. But she does not waste SM-2s on them. Not at first. She uses her 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun firing GPS-guided Excalibur rounds at clusters of drones flying in loose formation at 1,000 feet. Each Excalibur round costs about $68,000. Still more expensive than the target, but a destroyer carries hundreds of gun rounds and only 90 to 96 vertical launch cells. The calculus is simple. Spend shells, save missiles. At 12 miles, the Graveless 2 Phalanx CIWS systems spin up, each one a 20mm Gatling gun capable of spitting 4,500 rounds per minute. The Phalanx is the goalkeeper. If something gets past everything else, 4,500 tungsten rounds per minute is the last word in the conversation. Today, 3 shards get close enough to hear that last word. None of them survive it. 200 miles to the southeast, the 2 airborne Super Hornets from the Eisenhower are now supersonic, heading north at Mach 1.4, covering ground at roughly 1,050 miles per hour. At that speed, they will reach the remaining drone swarm in under 8 minutes. But they are not going for the drones. They are pushing through the swarm to get to something on the other side. The E-2D Hawkeye has identified 3 mobile transporter erector launchers moving on a coastal highway near Bandar Abbas, 100 miles east of Bandar Abbas. These are the trucks that fired the Khalij Fars missiles. They are relocating to secondary positions, which means they intend to shoot again. The Super Hornets are carrying AGM-88E AARGM, the Advanced Anti-Radiation Guided Missile, designed to home in on radar emissions. But the TELS are not emitting. So the pilots switch to targeting pods, using the AN-VASQ-228 ATFLIR to find the trucks on infrared against the cool desert road surface. At 35 miles, the lead pilot picks up the first TEL, a 6-axle vehicle trailing heat like a lit cigarette on a dark highway. Back over the Gulf, the San Jacinto kills the second Khalij Fars. Then the third. The Graveless SM-2s begin engaging the 4th and 5th as they enter terminal dive. At Mach 3, a Khalij Fars covers a mile every second in its final phase. The SM-2 engagement window is narrow. The 4th missile dies at 40,000 feet. The 5th dies at 22,000 feet, close enough that crew on the Graveless bridge can see the flash through the windows. The 6th Khalij Fars has a problem. Its guidance unit has malfunctioned and it is corkscrewing on a trajectory that will put it 11 miles east of the nearest ship, threatening nothing but open ocean. The Aegis system tracks it, classifies it as non-threat, and does not waste an interceptor. It hits the water at Mach 2.8 and produces a plume visible from 30 miles away. Someone in the Graveless CIC mutters that Iran just turned $7 million into an artificial reef. The 7th Khalij Fars is the one that matters. It has been flying a slightly different trajectory, lower and faster, hugging a course that uses the clutter of the drone swarm to mask its radar signature during mid-course. It separates from the drones at the last possible moment and begins its terminal dive at Mach 3.2 aimed at a point 180 nautical miles south-southwest of Bandar Abbas, exactly where the Eisenhower was supposed to be. The missile's onboard seeker activates, scanning for a ship-sized radar return. It finds open water. The 60-mile repositioning means there is nothing beneath it but waves and salt. The Khalij Fars, unable to reacquire, follows its ballistic arc into the Gulf at a combined impact energy equivalent to roughly 3 tons of TNT. The explosion throws a column of white water 200 feet into the air. The nearest American vessel is the destroyer USS Mason, 58 miles to the south, which registers the impact on sonar as an anomalous underwater event. The most dangerous missile in the salvo hit nothing because someone moved a 100,000-ton ship 14 hours before the first shot was fired. Iran spent $7 million on that missile. It bought them a really impressive fountain. At 0654 local time, the Eisenhower reaches a milestone. 2 more Super Hornets are airborne, bringing the total to 4 fighters launched in 7 minutes. The Air Boss has 2 more on catapults, and the flight deck crew is moving with the controlled violence that only a carrier deck produces, where a wrong step puts you in the jet blast deflector or under 50,000-pound aircraft rolling at 30 knots. 4 EA-18G Growlers are being armed on the hangar deck below, configured for electronic warfare and suppression of enemy air defenses. They will be airborne within 20 minutes. 300 nautical miles to the northwest, in Tehran, the IRGC Aerospace Force Command Center receives the first report from a signals intelligence station near Bushehr that has been monitoring American communications frequencies. The report says the Americans are launching aircraft. This is expected. What is not expected is the volume. The Eisenhower is not responding defensively. She is surging everything. At 0656, the lead Super Hornet reaches weapons release on the first tel near Bandar Abbas. The pilot fires an AGM-154 JSOW, a joint standoff weapon, a glide bomb with folding wings that can travel 70 nautical miles from release point to impact. It costs about $700,000. The JSOW contains 145 BLU-97 combined effects bomblets that scatter across an area the size of a football field. The TEL is 40 feet long and parked on an open stretch of highway with no overhead cover. The JSOW opens above it like a pinata filled with high explosives and tungsten fragments. The truck and everything within 200 meters of it ceases to be a military asset. The second TEL dies 90 seconds later to a GBU-31 JDM, a 2,000-pound GPS-guided bomb that hits the vehicle directly and leaves a crater the highway department is going to have feelings about. The third TEL has already reached a tunnel entrance carved into a hillside, part of Iran's underground missile infrastructure that they have spent 2 decades building into the Zagros mountain foothills. The Super Hornet pilot reports the TEL as entering a hardened shelter. He marks the coordinates. That tunnel is going to meet a GBU-28 bunker buster within the hour if the strike order expands, but for now the pilot banks south and begins prosecuting a secondary target list fed to his cockpit display from the E-2D. At 0656, 9 minutes after the first Iranian weapon crossed the coastline, the engagement is effectively over. All 47 Shah drones either destroyed or are about to be, the last 6 being chased down by Super Hornets whose pilots are using the opportunity as live-fire AIM-9X training against targets too slow to be challenging and too cheap to be satisfying. All 7 Khalij Fars ballistic missiles have been accounted for, 5 intercepted, 1 crashed on malfunction, 1 wasted on empty ocean. 0 American ships have been hit. 0 American aircraft have been hit. 0 American personnel are injured. The total cost of the American defensive response, counting interceptors, gun rounds, phalanx ammunition, and jet fuel, is estimated at roughly $120 million. Iran's total offensive cost was $48 million. The Americans spent more defending than Iran spent attacking. That is the math Iran wanted. It is also the only part of the plan that worked. 35 miles off the Iranian coast, the 2 original Super Hornets have destroyed 2 of the 3 TELs that fired the ballistic missiles. 4 more fighters are airborne and heading north with ordnance for expanded target list that includes an IRGC naval fast attack craft base at Bandar Abbas, a coastal radar installation near Jask, and a signals intelligence facility near Chabahar, 400 miles to the southeast near the Pakistani border. The EA-18G Growlers will arrive on station within 15 minutes, at which point every air defense radar along the southern Iranian coast will face a choice between staying on and being destroyed by anti-radiation missiles, or shutting off and being blind. Most of them will shut off. The ones that do not will become $4 million lessons in American electronic warfare. 90 miles south, the Eisenhower has not stopped launching. She has been averaging 1 aircraft every 3 minutes since the first catapult shot. By 0710 local time, she will have 18 aircraft airborne in a mission package capable of striking 30 separate fixed and mobile targets across a 400-mile stretch of Iranian coastline. The carrier that was supposed to be crippled is generating combat sorties faster than the IRGC can confirm what happened to its first salvo. Somewhere in the IRGC Aerospace Force Command Center, an officer is looking at a screen that shows 0 of his weapons reaching their target and all of his launch sites under attack. The plan was to wound the carrier and force the Americans into a defensive posture. Instead, the carrier is unhurt. The Americans are inside Iran's air defense network, and the window to launch a second salvo from surviving Tels is closing with every passing minute as fighters stack up over the Gulf. The IRGC commander gives the order to disperse remaining mobile launchers into tunnels and cease emissions on all coastal radar. It is the correct decision. It is also the same as admitting the attack failed. You do not hide your weapons 9 minutes after firing them because the plan went well. Below the surface of the Gulf, 40 miles north of the strike group, the Los Angeles-class submarine that Iran never detected reports to Fleet Command that she has been tracking 2 IRGC Henderson-class patrol boats that sortied from Bandar Abbas at high speed during the missile launch, likely intending to conduct a fast attack run with C-802 anti-ship cruise missiles under the cover of the aerial salvo. The submarine has had a firing solution on both boats for 11 minutes. She is waiting for authorization. The authorization comes at 0659. 2 Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes enter the water 8 seconds apart. Each one costs $3.8 million and carries a 650-pound warhead at speeds exceeding 55 knots through the water. The Henderson-class boats displace 140 tons each. The first torpedo hits at 0702. The second hits its target at 0703. Both patrol boats are gone before their crews can transmit a distress call. The submarine descends to 400 feet and repositions east. She never surfaced. She was never detected. The IRGC will not learn what happened to those boats for 2 days. At 0710 local time, 23 minutes after the first shard crossed the Iranian coastline, the Eisenhower Strike Group's defensive phase is complete and its offensive phase is running at full capacity. 18 aircraft overhead. 2 enemy launch platforms destroyed. 2 patrol boats sunk. Every drone and missile accounted for. Iran's most ambitious naval strike since the tanker war of 1988 has produced 0 damage to the target and lost every asset that participated in the attack, plus several that did not. The Eisenhower turns into the wind and launches 2 more Super Hornets. Somewhere in a defense contractor boardroom in Raytheon's Tucson facility, the next quarterly earnings call just got a lot more interesting. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other video on how the US Navy defended the Red Sea against 6 months of Houthi missile attacks. Bye for now.